You know, with all the evidence lately that's been coming in about how capitalism is benefiting the population of the world, it still amazes me that we have to sometimes combat these old, tired socialist arguments that the left continues to trot out. You know, this study came out just a while back that showed that the poverty rate in America has declined, and it was the first significant move in the poverty level in America in about a decade. And then, of course, you know, the last thing that caused the percentage of people in poverty to change in this country was the welfare reform that Clinton passed through with the Republican Congress in the 90s. And we kicked a bunch of people off of welfare, and all of a sudden the poverty rate went down. Less people were impoverished after we kicked a bunch of them off of welfare. Then just recently, studies came out about the poverty level of the world, and that has also seen a significant decline. And the major contributing factor in that was the free market reforms in two areas of the world that are some of the most populous areas in the world, and that is India and China. The effect that these policies have had on bringing their population out of poverty has, because they are so populous, it's shown up in the overall world poverty statistics. But yet we still continue to hear these old, tired, worn-out arguments from the left about how capitalism leads to an ever-widening gap between the rich and the poor, and how we're creating two classes, and ones are the haves and the have-nots, and the underclass, and all this stuff. And so it was with great interest that I read this article that I came across in the opinion section of the Oklahoma City paper, the Daily Oklahoma. It's by Thomas Sowell, and it is entitled Income Confusion. And I'll just read the excerpt now. Anyone who follows the media has probably heard many times that the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer, and incomes of the population in general are stagnating. Moreover, those who say these things can produce many statistics, including data from the Census Bureau, which seem to indicate that. On the other hand, income tax data recently released by the Internal Revenue Service seem to show the exact opposite. People in the bottom fifth of income tax filers in 1996 had their incomes increased by 91% by 2005. So from 1996 to 2005, people that were in the bottom fifth of earners in 96 had increased their income by 91%. Not information that you'll hear trumping it out by the liberal media and their socialist friends. The top 1%, the rich, who are supposed to be monopolizing the money according to the left, saw their incomes decline by a whopping 26%. Decline. Meanwhile, the average taxpayer's real income increased by 24% between 1996 and 2005. How can all this be? How can official statistics from different agencies of the same government lead to such radically different conclusions? There are wild cards in such data that need to be kept in mind when you hear income statistics thrown around, especially when they were thrown around by people who are trying to prove something for political purposes. One of these wild cards is that most Americans do not stay in the same income brackets throughout their lives. Millions of people move from one bracket to another in just a few years. What that means statistically is that comparing the top income bracket with the bottom income bracket over a period of years tells you nothing about what is actually happening to the flesh and blood human beings who are moving between the brackets during those years. That is why the IRS data, which are for people 25 and older, and which follow the same individuals over time, find those in the bottom 20% of income tax filers almost doubling their income in a decade. That is why they are no longer in the same bracket. So incomes from poor people have increased 91% from 96 until 2005, while the top 1% have actually seen their income go down. Now this is a problem we encounter all the time of comparing categories rather than comparing people. This is the argument I get when I talk about voucher schools, and they said, well, the voucher schools are full of children whose parents are concerned, so naturally their scores are going to be higher. And the public schools are full of children whose parents didn't care enough to move them into the voucher schools. But that does nothing to explain why you take one kid out of the public school and he does better in the voucher school. So when you actually track income in this instance, the poor are getting richer, and the rich are actually getting poorer. We're creating more wealth through capitalism. 91% increase in incomes of people in the bottom 20%. Where we mess up as we look at wealth or income, and we include all the people on welfare. These statistics are for income earners. Income earners. That means people that have a paycheck and that pay taxes into the IRS. This statistical data shows great improvement for income earners. However, the overall statistical data on poverty continues to be less than favorable because it takes into account the people that receive a government welfare check that are not income earners. And for that group, people that are on welfare and public assistance, they stay chronically stagnant in that poverty, below the poverty line. And that's so strange. The people that are working, the people that the left says cannot have any upward mobility, they increase their income. But the people on welfare that the left say is going to be helped to have a better life by welfare, they remain under the poverty line. So why is that? Because welfare will never bring people out of poverty. Only productive actions lead to wealth. So that's what we need to consider when we're talking about all this income equality and things like this. And it's the same thing with minimum wage. People say we ought to raise the minimum wage, but they don't take into account the fact that you have, one person does not earn the minimum wage 20 years, or 14 years. The minimum wage hasn't risen in 14 years. Well, guess what? People that were earning minimum wage 14 years ago aren't still earning minimum wage. Okay, the minimum wage should stay the same, always. And it should be $0, because people will earn more money the longer they're in the workforce. The minimum wage is only a beginning point. It doesn't represent the same people over time. All right? Same thing with the income here. People are better off because of capitalism. Or at least when they go out and they work and they earn income. Yeah, people stay in poverty on welfare. It's amazing.